Images we will never forget. Devastation we will always remember. The floods of 1993 shaped our lives and changed our lifestyles.
For weeks, we watched on television the flooding along the upper Mississippi. Then in July, the floods of 1993 came lapping at our front door.
The biggest disaster in Iowa history brought out some of the worst from Mother Nature and some of the best in human nature.
And over the next 60 minutes or so, we'll bring you both. Lightning lit up the sky and torrential rains fell across central Iowa. During those pivotal days in July, most of us had no idea we were in for flooding of this magnitude. Among the first areas nailed by the floodwaters, Ames. The Skunk River and Squaw Creek let loose, dumping up to 9 feet of water over the city.
Only from the air could the total devastation be realized. Interstate 35 shut down, closed because of high water. For Story County farmers, a sickening sight as they watched their crops go underwater. On the campus of Iowa State University, millions of dollars in damage to Hilton Coliseum. 13 feet of water, higher than the basketball backboard, flooded the Coliseum. And the Venker Memorial Golf Course turned into one huge water hazard. By Saturday, waters in Ames began to recede, and business owners and residents started to tackle the huge job of cleaning up.
Holy cow, what all we got here?
It was about the same time that everything busted loose in West Des Moines.
Despite extraordinary efforts from volunteers and National Guard troops, a levee along Railroad Avenue can no longer hold back the Raccoon, a river out of control, and bringing record flood levels to Valley Junction and Des Moines.
Volunteers who spent all day filling sandbags and building the levee were now rushing to safety. It was a race against time for some store owners along Fifth Street as they worked hard to protect their businesses. But National Guardsmen were in a hurry to get the people out.
It's less than a half a block away on this side, and it's about 2.5 blocks that way, so it's getting here fast. It broke at both ends, and it's coming to sandwiches, so.
It's here. Out. Leave them here. Forget it.
That evening, Valley Junction and parts of West Des Moines evacuate, while downtown Des Moines prepares for the worst from the rising Des Moines River. The flood forces officials to cancel Sunday's downtown Grand Prix. But by early Sunday morning, racing is the last thing on anyone's mind. News Center 13 brought you the story under backup power. In a dimly lit studio, thousands of Central Iowans hanging on every word.
Once again, within the next few moments, in fact, within 10 minutes now, the Polk County Sheriff's Department advises that the Des Moines water supply will be cut off. The flooding has been so severe around the waterworks area that the water supply for Des Moines will be cut off. Now, that does not include West Des Moines. The water supply is still okay there. Out in West Des Moines, though, they are advising that you bottle up a couple of gallons of water just in case the flooding gets bad enough out in West Des Moines that you won't be able to get water out there.
And we have this just in also. First of all, let's go and take a look at some of that video of the lightning, and it's just an awesome display of lightning once again. And you can see that this is the downtown area. This is a very, very eerie sight. And if you lived in Iowa during the ice storm, and it was an eerie sight that night as well, with all the power out, and when the city goes dark, it is kind of a scary looking sight, and that's what we're experiencing right now. Power is out across a good portion of the city, and a lot of folks are driving around, and headlights are obviously needed in some areas where some of the work efforts are going on right now. What we do understand, though, is that up to 250,000 1,000 people in central Iowa in 10 communities have been left now without safe drinking water, and this is of prime importance, especially for elderly people and certainly with people with young children and infants. This could be a very tragic situation.
And it took only minutes for Des Moines residents to respond, filling up supermarkets in search of now precious drinking water.
This is 2:30 a.m. at Tate's Super Value on 42nd and University. Shoppers searching for water, a commodity in short supply.
Here we are, almost an hour later, still filling up.
I've worked here for 2 years and it's never been this busy, ever. It's never, ever been this busy at night.
Now it's Sunday morning about 6:30. People flock to nearby communities looking for water. But by now, shelves are bare at this Hy-Vee in Urbandale.
And I think it'll probably straighten up in a few days. I sure hope so.
This purified water is all that's left, and nothing lasts forever. Although this is purified water, Hy-Vee officials are still recommending that you boil the water before drinking it, just as a precautionary measure. In shopping carts, people grab plastic containers for as much water as they can score, but milk and juice ran out early in the day.
Let's see, I've been here since 5:30, and this is probably about the 20th time I filled it.
Any chance it's going to run out?
That's it right there. You're looking at all the orange juice I've got.
I noticed you have no water in the cart.
There is no water, and we were up at 3 o'clock, and we've got everything that'll hold water at home, full of water. So hopefully that'll get us through a couple days till they get some in here.
Store employees say they've never seen anything like it.
We had all 13 registers going, and there were customers at least 6-7 deep waiting to get checked out. And the line was all the way back by like aisle 14.
During the early morning hours, impatient shoppers didn't want to stand in hour-and-a-half-long lines.
What it amounted to is people were just getting impatient. A very skeleton crew working Saturday night, Sunday morning, and probably somewhere in the area of 100 to 150 people waiting in line to check out, and people just started pushing on through.
Stores are working to bring in water, juice, and milk from surrounding communities. In Urbandale, Stacia Strand, News Center 13.
When daylight hit the Des Moines Metro, residents thought only of water, how to get it, and how to get rid of it.
The enormity of the flood could best be seen from the air, and that's exactly where News Center 13's Jim Strickland spent much of his time. A look now at central Iowa covered by the floods of '93.
We are now coming up to a levee break. See that, Michael? See that levee break there, just by the Demco plant? That's one of the breaches that they have had in the levee, despite the fact that they put in concrete highway barricades to try to protect this city. Unfortunately, it just did not work as well as they had hoped. A couple of blocks up, you can see the other levee break. You see that there, Mike? That's by the Reiner Brothers Plumbing Company, just a little bit to the west of there. Of course, Valley Junction has been inundated with floodwaters, as has a good part of the lower lying parts of West Des Moines. The Raccoon, you really can't tell where it starts, where Walnut Creek ends, and where Jordan Creek comes in. It's all just one confluence here, right in the middle of West Des Moines. You can see the hundreds of volunteers that have converged upon the water treatment plant here in West Des Moines. The sandbags are being stacked 15 feet high around this thing to try to protect the filter system so they do not become contaminated. You can see that the river has come up from the backside and has inundated nearby Holiday Park. You can see the baseball diamonds down here just adjacent to the water treatment plant are under several feet of water, but again, the water plant itself is high and dry. One of the few good pieces of news that I can report to you in the skies out of West Des Moines today. Hundreds of volunteers again have been shuttled in here from Valley West Mall. You can see how high they are sandbagging around this thing just to protect the integrity of West Des Moines' water system. You see that the entire waterworks facility has been inundated with water. Contaminants from the Raccoon River have destroyed the sanitizing capability of the waterworks plant. It is for this reason that you are looking at right now, live here from probably maybe 750 feet above the waterworks plant, that 250,000 people, maybe 300,000 people, will be without water for at least a week. This thing is going to have to be pumped out, after they create their own levee to keep the river out, they're going to have to keep the water out and then pump out what is left inside once the river goes down. Then they've got to re-sanitize the entire thing, and we're told that's going to take about a week. That is the Raccoon River that you see here to the left of the waterworks plant. Can you swing out here, Mike, and shoot the river itself? You can see how wide it has become. And Grays Lake is further down there in the Holiday Inn, but we wanted to show folks exactly why they don't have any water, and that's the reason. This is, again, North High School, the athletic fields you see over here to the east of the high school. We are coming from the north, flying right over top of the high school. There you see a rowboat has been parked here where people have tried to get into the building. It is inundated with the flood waters, more on the southern exposure of the high school than on the north. We're flying now over, right over the building, and then there's Birdland Park over this way. My photographer, Mike Worland, you can see the courtyard. That's a bad sign. And this is 2nd Avenue. You can see how the water is cascading. Is that someone with a surfboard or a belly board there in the water, Mike? Trying to walk across. There's someone down here. Look at this. There's someone body surfing on 2nd Avenue by the Faust auto body shop. Don't do this, people. Come on. That water is gross. This guy is body surfing down 6th Avenue, or down 2nd Avenue, excuse me. You can see that the city armory here is compromised by the Des Moines River. That's Job Service of Iowa, just to screen left of the city armory, and then the state office building, which is okay there, at about East 6th and Grand, I guess is what cross street would be. Embassy Suites, they're okay, but you can see that the street has been sandbagged between Embassy Suites and the federal courthouse. You shooting that, Mike, okay? Okay, we're on a wide shot now, I'm told by my chief photographer, Mike Worland. Again, they have sandbagged to try to protect City Hall. Then you see the Embassy Suites and the federal courthouse on the other side, and then Des Moines Police Headquarters. Those are the four granite-colored buildings that you see in a row from left to right as you look at the screen. Sandbags are up there to protect them because the water has come over the bridges there on Grand and on Locust. Water is over the bridges, not yet on Walnut and, of course, Court Avenue. That's a whole other story. French Quarter, the French Quarter restaurant there in the building at 100 Court Avenue. Soup's on, and it's a muddy soup, to say the least. We're just flying up the Des Moines River now to the confluence with the Raccoon. And you're about to see, I think you can see it now, Sec Taylor Stadium. You can see that the water has now compromised the outfield wall of the stadium. As we all know, they poured $9 million into this place to make it the show place for the I-Cubs of Des Moines. The outfield, a good portion of it has been destroyed. The seats are okay, and everything under the concession and everything, they're okay for now. It looks as though, however, that the first base side dugout does have water pouring into it, and that is going to compromise part of those facilities below the stands. It looks like the actual seats themselves are okay. Now I want to show you a sight that's truly sad. This is the airport Holiday Inn. Holiday Inn South, I guess is what they call it, just bordering on Grays Lake. Of course, Grays Lake is more like Grays Sea at this point. The water is well up to the doors of the Holiday Inn South, a hotel that takes a lot of traffic. A lot of those people that come in from the airport stay at this hotel. This hotel is their welcoming site, I guess, other than the jetway itself at Des Moines International. And it's going to be some time before the Holiday Inn gets back in shape as well. Gosh, it's hard to tell. What, that might be 10, 11 feet, I guess, Mike, there. How deep the water is there. It's well past the first floor. Look at that. You see the carport there, Michael? The carport sign, what's that say about clearance? 9 feet, 9 inches, something like that? And there's maybe a couple of feet clearance there. So we're looking at about 7 feet of water there around the Holiday Inn South. And then there's the Financial Plus Credit Union as we head down Valley Drive. This is the Skunk River now that we're talking about. The water is cascading through an industrial section of Colfax I'm looking at the Colfax Livestock Sale Company down here, Stuart, this gold-colored building here. The Skunk River is just pouring through this industrial area. Look at the warehouses that we see down here. Water just about to the roof of these warehouses in the town of Colfax. I'm guessing that the Skunk River's got to be, geez, at least a mile wide here. The devastation here is certainly obvious. We've got some RVs down here. You see those, Stuart? A couple of, right down here by the last warehouse, there are some RVs in the water. Just the roofs are visible there. We're now in the copter cam circling the town of Eddyville. This place is a virtual ghost town as they try to pump the water out of here that first rushed in on Sunday night. This place has been evacuated now for the better part of a week. About 80 to 85% of this town is gone to higher ground, according to the mayor here, Teddy Carr. About 200 people are now housed in a shelter at the local high school. You can see a couple of cars are trying to make their way through what floodwater is left in here. We have had some seepage from the levee system here. This town is located just on the northern side of the Des Moines River. And still there is some standing water after a flood that really hit this town severely in the early part of the week. Here at the Valley Village Mobile Home Park, this is one of the worst spots here in Ottumwa. And as you can see, as we just crossed the tree line into this main street, that's about the only way to get around here in the Valley Village, by boat. Not sure if these people are with the Corps assessing damage or just trying to evacuate. But the Army Corps of Engineers says this is one of the worst spots in Ottumwa. They seem to be in pretty good spirits here, waving to us up here as we shoot their picture with the copter cam, but unfortunately, things have got to be overall pretty depressing here at the Valley Village Mobile Home Park. Now circling very low over the Ottumwa water plant. There is a serious concern in Ottumwa that what happened in Des Moines could happen here. So they are moving 5,000 yards of dirt to create a secondary levee to help protect the water plant. There you see the sign, Water Purification Plant, Ottumwa, Iowa. Ottumwa has clean water now and plenty of it. However, again, there is a concern that what happened in Des Moines could happen here.
Ottumwa managed to keep flood waters from contaminating its water treatment plant. Unfortunately, Des Moines could not.
And reclaiming the waterworks turned out to be a huge problem with no easy solution.
Reporter Scott Pope took us into the heat of the battle and brought us some of the most memorable pictures from the floods of '93.
Heading out over the railroad tracks that are just to the south of Grays Lake. Flying over Grays Lake right now, this area's been closed off for several weeks now, and you can see why. The Raccoon River flowing directly over the levees into Grays Lake. This place is going to be a mess for a long, long time. We're going down the channel of the Raccoon on Bryan's side. Hard to determine where the river channel starts and where it ends. It's just all over the place. Swinging out over the Waterworks complex. Water well up to the doors and on several windows of the administration building down here. I would guess water probably 6 to 7 feet deep. LD McMullen did tell us that the filtration system was in good shape. It's the big pumps that pump the water out into the water mains of the distribution center. That's the real problem. They got to get the water and get this mud cleaned out of here so they can make repairs on these pumps. If they can get that done, McMillan says we should have some water running through the system by Sunday. Potable water that you can drink, however, going to take another 30 days. The National Guard troops, there's about 3 dozen of them down below us trying to reinforce this levee. The objective, keep the water out as long as possible, give those big 16-inch pumps and 12-inch pumps a chance to clean some of this water out. The sandbags literally are going to be just dumped over the side. One after another, just dumped as we hover here above the levee. The guys on the ground who are donning their life preservers and their other equipment, they're the ones in charge of building this levee up. It's going to be 16 bags wide, 3 bags high by the time they're done. 100,000 sandbags will be used to reinforce the levee here at Waterworks. It's a big job, a very big job. To go on and on and on as long as it takes. A huge operation.
During the floods of '93, our lives and lifestyles changed dramatically.
No longer could we take for granted even the simplest of things, such as turning on the faucet for a drink of water or flushing the toilet.
We broke old habits and developed new routines. And every day, twice a day, we all watch those briefings from the Flood Command Center.
But keep upbeat, hang in there. We're turning the corner. I do not, as mayor of this community, believe that they should be in those buildings without proper sanitation. And so we would ask you to use the water extremely carefully, use it like it's gold. If it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down.
You have to do what you have to do.
I'm not worried about the water. It hasn't inconvenienced me at all.
It is our intent to be able to start the phasing in of Zone A, B, C, D tomorrow.
For many Central Iowans, the daily flood routine was broken up on Wednesday, July 14th.
That's the day President Clinton came to Des Moines for a first-hand look at the floods of '93.
Air Force One had wheels down here at the Des Moines International, according to my watch, about 10:18. That puts the president in here 20 minutes ahead of schedule, which is not like him. Usually he has a little bit of a delay in arriving to appointments, but he is on the ground, coasting down at the other end of the runway.
President Clinton touched down at the Des Moines International Airport, but didn't spend much time on the ground before taking off in Marine One for an aerial tour of flood-ravaged areas with Governor Terry Branstad.
This building, the first building is the Des Moines Waterworks. That's where the problem is. It's still surrounded by water. You have to go in and out of there by helicopter. They get dropping sandbags by helicopter. They're taking the pumps out with that. National Guard helicopter. That's it, isn't it? That's it right there. That's the waterworks. That's the water plant. That's the water plant. That's where the problem is.
Despite the fact the water had fallen a couple of feet, there was still plenty to see, and the president seemed moved. A Chinook helicopter hovered as the president watched the effort to save the water plant.
Calm down a little there, right? Yeah, a little higher there. Calm down a couple feet. All of this was underwater. All of this here.
The president also met with Iowa's congressional delegation. They're warning not to lowball the disaster bill sent to Congress.
You're going to have a hard time with the second go-around in Congress. And so my only advice would be to look at all your figures and then look at the contingency and bump those up, just so that you're prepared, because we got Missouri that's going to follow us, and who knows what's down south.
This is a great example of volunteerism.
Thank you for
How many of these loads have you taken in the last several days?
I couldn't even begin to count. Probably at least 5 loads a day.
He's done this as a volunteer ever since
Some of it's been in the middle of Des Moines, but you know the river's almost impossible to get across. So
thanks.
Be sure and give these drivers.
After his helicopter tour, the president stopped at a water distribution site on Des Moines' south side, offering a message of encouragement and hearing words of despair.
My parents lost their home, and I have not been home for like a week.
Excuse me, sir. Would you go that way after you reach the president?
I can't take it anymore.
Just hang in there.
I can't take it anymore.
Thank you.
More than just helicopter rides and photo ops for the president, he used our WHO television and radio studios to deliver a message via satellite to flooded Midwesterners.
Just before I came on this program, I talked to the director of our Office of Management and Budget, Leon Panetta, and authorized him to send today to the Congress a bill to provide emergency help to the families, the farmers, the businesses, and the communities who've been hurt by the rains and the flooding along the Mississippi River and its tributaries. The principle, the operative principle here ought to be that the people who've been hit by this disaster should not be treated any differently than people who were victims of Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Hugo, the terrible devastation on the island of Kauai and in the state of Hawaii. We ought to treat everybody the same. I talked to people who had lost everything in their houses, who've lost their businesses, people who obviously have had their farms flooded out. It was a very moving thing. I talked to parents who were worried about their children and, you know, whether they could get adequate water and how they were going to do that safely. And some of them had been able to send their children to relatives in other communities, some had not. But the spirit of the people seemed pretty undaunted. You know, several people broke down and they were very choked up, but they were resolute. And I think that as terrible as these things are, in some ways they bring out the best in people. I saw an enormous number of people who had just stopped their lives and come in to, you know, volunteer and help other people deal with their problems. This has been a particularly moving experience for me and for the Vice President and for our families, because so many of these towns that were hit were on the bus tour that we took last year. And when I've looked at these towns and I've seen what's happened, so many of them, you know, we were particularly along the river. We were in East St. Louis and Hannibal and Wayland and Keokuk and Fort Madison, Burlington in this state, Muscatine, Davenport, Bettendorf. We visited all those places. We visited Prairie du Chien and La Crosse in Wisconsin. So I've met a lot of the people that have been hurt by this flood, and I just want you to know that we're going to do everything we can to be there and be a good partner. And if there are more things that should be done, I want the people to let us know through FEMA. We had a horrible flood in my state and lost a couple of little towns completely. I mean, they were totally underwater and lost a lot of farmland a couple of years ago. And there were all kinds of questions about whether the Corps of Engineers back up the river had managed the dams properly. But I have
Same questions are occurring
Same
now.
questions,
Yeah.
and they're legitimate questions, and they can be looked into. But I have to tell you, again, I want to say that when water gets 4 feet higher than the 100-year floodplain, it's almost impossible to conclude that some technical decision back up the river could have made a big difference. I think it's worth looking at. I think we should look at all aspects of this. But I think that it is unlikely that made a major contribution to this problem.
Before leaving central Iowa, the president visited volunteers filling sandbags being used to shore up the levee near Waterworks Park.
Mr. President, what do you think of what you've seen today?
It's very impressive what the people here are doing. Very, very moving.
Andrew,
Not in a city like this.
Just incredible, just incredible.
Thank you.
Let some people talk to
These people are incredible. Look at them. They can take a whole truck full of sand and fill it bags in 10 minutes, they said.
We need sandbags.
Thank you.
I think we've kind of been surrounded down here, Ed and Lori, so we are trying to watch the president fill a sandbag. He is doing that right now. Bend your back. Back it up a little bit here, please. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you saw here today and what you thought your impressions?
Well, it was worse than I thought it would be. Even you can't tell from seeing pictures in the newspaper. But I was very moved by the work people are doing here. I saw a lot of people who've lost everything they own, and they know that we can't make them whole, but at least we have to try to help, to be good neighbors and good partners, and that's what we're going to try to do. And I feel good about what I saw in terms of the enormous effort being made here to put the community back together and put this whole area back together, and I think we'll be able to really do some good. Now, you know, once every 100 years, you're going to have a flood like this. We're going to be reminded that we're not in total control of our own affairs and destiny, but I think that people are pulling out of it.
Bill Clinton says aid is on the way. He says he hopes he can get it as soon as possible. Tonight, he's back to Washington.
While the president's visit to Des Moines brought plenty of national news coverage, it didn't start or end there.
The nation and the world watched for weeks while Central Iowans fought with the floods of '93.
The great floods of 1993 are beginning to look like a war zone as Des Moines tries desperately to repair its water supply system, and President Clinton tours the devastated areas.
This is a special edition of NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Tonight, reporting from Des Moines, Iowa.
Good evening from the capital of Iowa, where it rained again today. President Clinton came to town. He looked at the flood damage and said he'd never seen anything like it. The president has asked Congress for $2.5 billion. That's almost double his earlier request for Midwestern flood relief. He said he'll almost surely need more, and Senate Republican leader Bob Dole promised quick cooperation. As for the weather in the rest of the flood area, storm clouds moved through the area again. There was more rain, and more is expected to come. Now, here's some of what the president said and did here today. The president was stunned by the spread of the flood and the damage since he last visited Iowa just before his trip to Tokyo. That's why we lost electricity. 250,000 residents remain without water in Des Moines. That's the largest American city ever to be in that condition. Iowa politicians were with the president at every step. They said they want their state to be treated at least as well as the victims of Hurricane Andrew in Florida. The president also met with volunteers and victims who lined up to receive water trucked in from surrounding states.
I can't take it anymore.
Just hang in there. Later, at the site of a massive volunteer effort to reinforce a levee around the Des Moines water plant, the president couldn't resist the temptation to be photographed filling his own sandbag. But to accommodate presidential security and the press, the volunteers did stop sandbagging for a time. All 99 counties in Iowa have been declared disaster areas, virtually the whole state. Illinois and Missouri have yet to see the worst of it, and they're suffering as well. Tonight, NBC's Jim Cummins is still at his Iowa post, and Dawn Fratangelo is covering Illinois and Missouri.
Since Clinton last visited Iowa 10 days ago, the state has gotten almost 5 more inches of rain. Reservoirs have filled to overflowing. Rivers and streams have spilled out of their banks, crushed levees, driving thousands of people out of their homes and businesses, and contaminated the water supply in Des Moines.
This is a different sort of emergency than I saw 10 days ago.
In that statewide radio address, the president said he is asking Congress to provide money for flood victims in 5 states.
The bill will initially ask for about $2.5 billion in disaster funds.
Clinton promised to seek even more if necessary. The flood victims who crowded into the county clinic for tetanus shots heard the president's message and liked it.
I'm real confident that he's going to do something to help the people of Des Moines and Iowa.
The big question, how fast?
Well, they were saying 2 to 3 weeks, which is fast, but, you know, a lot of us, there's people with no homes now that need it right away.
Today, there was even more rain, forcing volunteers in the National Guard to continue their fight against the floods outside the waterworks in Des Moines. Engineers are working round the clock to restore water service by Sunday. An ominous warning overnight, a fire that destroyed a local print shop while firefighters pumped water from trucks.
My worst nightmare now would be that we would have a fire in a high-rise, multiple dwelling type building that was occupied by senior citizens.
This is becoming routine, and now the authorities are warning people to even boil this water before they drink it. Most, like Carolyn Rosenfeld, say they will.
Just going from one container to another.
Yeah.
Just why take a chance.
Business losses continue to mount. The business district resembles a ghost town. The manager of this Marriott expects his hotel will lose $300,000 by the time it reopens next Monday. Iowa Governor Terry Branstad said, what we need now is a month of sunshine, but the forecast is for more thunderstorms tonight and tomorrow. Jim Cummins, NBC News, Des Moines.
This is Dawn Fratangelo in New Canton, Illinois, where the biggest stretch of farmland along the Mississippi is now in danger. It's the country's second largest agricultural valley.
If it would entirely flood, you'd have 110,000 acres underwater.
The levee protecting the district stretches 60 miles, and it's leaking.
We got a lot of water, a lot of water.
Workers are trying to reinforce every inch. To help, Illinois has activated 3,500 National Guard troops, the most since the riots of '68. They make up a team effort with volunteers and even 10-year-old Scott Kendrick.
It just feels like I'm doing something instead of sitting at home, like I'm helping.
Put just a small roll right there, Dan.
Scott's father, Dan, could lose 1,100 acres. He'd rather save his land now than seek federal aid later.
95% of your farmers in this valley, in this bottoms down here, they don't want a loan. They don't need another loan. That's not the fix. The fix is to get this levee railroad will control this river.
The farmers in this district pay a tax to maintain this levee system. They believe it's money well spent. They're just not willing to pay the ultimate price.
If it breaks here, everybody south of us is going to be relieved, because you got 110,000 acres, and if it covered it all, it's going to take a lot of relief off below us.
They got some relief overnight from these 2 levee breaks upriver, which sacrificed other areas. 2 days ago, Mark Vonderhaar thought he could save his home. He was wrong.
It's a little tough riding around in the yard in a boat. Walking through with waders on.
The river has defeated him. He plans to sell his house and move his family.
It's going to be hard for them to leave their home, but they don't realize, really how much it's really going to affect everything.
It is a cruel, one-sided game the Mississippi plays. Still, thousands hold out for a chance at winning. Dawn Fratangelo, NBC News, New Canton, Illinois.
And Des Moines is our next stop. That it's some 170 miles west of the Mississippi River shows just how the flooding is widespread throughout the Midwest. Before this weekend, Des Moines seemed prepared. Then everything changed literally overnight. More than 250,000 people who endured weeks of rain suddenly without drinking water. Just imagine that. Life without running water. And it could go on for days. Tonight, Deborah Roberts is in Des Moines to recount the decisions, the drama, and to relive what happened minute by minute.
Thursday morning in Des Moines, Iowa begins as almost every morning has for the past month. It rains, just as it has the day before and the day before that. 33 out of 38 days, a year's worth of rain in 2 weeks.
Let's check our first forecast now. Gary Amble standing by. Gary?
And it looks like we could see a little bit of rain this weekend.
The newscast that night doesn't devote much time to the weather, and the city goes about its business preparing for Saturday's Grand Prix. The top story is the lottery.
The good news is somebody won. The bad news is it wasn't an Iowan.
The city thinks itself well prepared for any eventuality. It has strengthened its levees and flood barriers, even built a multi-million-dollar dam along the Des Moines River, which flows through the center of the city. The trouble is, not many are paying close attention to the Raccoon River, a smaller tributary which also flows into the heart of Des Moines. The Raccoon, unlike the Des Moines, has no flood controls, no dams. By noon Thursday, it is already rising, and no one expects trouble. But by 8 p.m. Thursday, the skies open again. It pours.
They had up to 7 inches of rain just north and west of the Des Moines region, which put a tremendous amount of water into the Des Moines River Basin.
Much more water than the city could ever hope to handle. By 2 p.m. Friday, automatic sensors upstream along the Raccoon send the first disturbing signals. The river is rapidly swelling, up 50%. Downstream, one of the first priorities becomes trying to protect the water treatment plant.
The sandbags are being stacked 15 feet high around this thing.
They think time is on their side. The forecast is that the river will crest Tuesday at no more than 22 feet.
Live from WHO TV 13.
But later that evening, the local news is full of hints of what's to come.
It's the worst flooding the Midwest has seen in years.
And it now comes lapping at our front door.
8 a.m. Saturday, volunteers take to the streets to protect their city.
They're building one heck of a wall over there, as you can probably see it. And I'm not sure that water could ever get through it, and that's going to be a lifesaver for us.
Noon Saturday, flood preparations continue. But city officials expecting crest along the Raccoon and Des Moines rivers by Tuesday get a new shocking forecast from the National Weather Service. Record floodwaters will hit the city in the next 24 hours.
We had virtually no notice in terms of the big flood. We knew there were serious flooding problems, but we've had serious flooding problems in the past.
City Manager Cy Carney moves his Emergency Operations Command to a high school on the ridge above the rivers.
When did you decide that you needed help from the National Guard, that you just couldn't do it all, and how do you make that decision?
Oh, I think in this case, the Guard knew of our plight, and then it was just much worse, so they knew it. But of course, we didn't know until noon on Saturday. That's the time we knew it was going to be the big one, and we didn't. We notified GARD then, but it was too late to do anything at that point.
The waters continue to rise all afternoon as the National Guard helps police to evacuate low-lying areas. As evening falls, troops are sent to the levees.
GARD was called out to help sandbag the levees in West Des Moines, Iowa, one of the suburbs, and they watched the water come up very rapidly. And there was a frantic effort to get the levee high enough to meet the crest.
8 p.m. Saturday night, Colonel Charles Gordon's National Guard troops lose their first battle with the river as the floodwaters pour through the levee and onto the guardsmen working west of the city at Valley Junction.
They walked in water to their chest. They were in boats. They were in trucks. They were running down the street with the crest going down behind them.
You have obviously been called into other disasters before, but surely this has got to be among
31 and 39 years, and this is the worst.
Saturday night is torturous for the volunteers on the levees. Shortly before 3 a.m., the dike fails at the Des Moines Water Works, flooding the wells, the pumps, and the purification plant. Des Moines has lost its water supply. A power substation has also flooded, blacking out most of downtown, including government buildings. In the middle of the night, word spreads that residents will have 15 minutes to fill whatever they can before the water goes out. Then they get the bad news. The water they have is contaminated by fuel spills and raw sewage.
When that occurs, essentially, you have no confidence in the safety of that water. So after around 9:15 to 9:45 on Sunday morning, we began to figure out what would be the best way that we could support the state.
Frank Young is with the Public Health Service, which sent analysts to Des Moines to assess the threat of contaminated water.
We put a fast team into the air. They landed in Davenport, and by 7 o'clock we were functional in the disaster field office.
And we got up before dawn and started filling up water. Anything we could get in, you know, putting water in, pans, buckets, anything.
Daybreak Sunday, water stations are being set up by the National Guard. Hundreds of residents begin lining up. Supermarket shelves are quickly cleared out of bottled water. The local NBC station broadcast on emergency power.
So we are glad that we're here to give you the information that you may need.
Evacuations continue in flooded neighborhoods.
Basically, all we can do is get everything that we possibly can out, and salvage what we can. That's all we can do.
Sunday night, Des Moines fights water with man and machine. By Monday, some good news. The forecast calls for clear skies, and both rivers drop 2 inches. The sun comes out, and so do lines of residents desperate for clean drinking water. Robert Richardson left his dry home 40 miles away to offer water to a Des Moines hospital. When they don't need it, he brings it to a parking lot.
That's a 200-gallon tank, and that's how much we've given away, probably given away 80 gallons or so. And it looks like we'll be here.
It's going to be tiring work out here. It's hot.
Yeah. I've worked hard all my life. This is easy.
Residents here learn they'll be living this way for weeks. Running water is 7 days away, and it won't be safe to drink for at least a month. This West Des Moines hotel, which still has running water, invites those who don't to come by and take a shower.
K-Bear.
But some have more to worry about. 71-year-old Larry Redrick is one of 200 people forced from their homes into a Red Cross shelter set up in an elementary school.
This makes the second shelter we've been in.
Are you getting frustrated?
Yes, our people are. I think they are.
On Monday night, Des Moines begins to look like a war zone. A Huey helicopter drops sandbags around the flooded water treatment plant. And a massive C-5 transport plane brings in mobile water purification units for local hospitals. By this morning, hopes for relief were dashed. It rained again, an inch or more all over Des Moines.
When you're battling the flood, anytime that you hear raindrops or hear lightning, you just start thinking, oh, here we go again, one more time.
Within a few hours, the Raccoon River, which had begun to recede, was up. It's now 7 feet above the flood stage, but still safely under last weekend's record 24-foot crest. The soggy weather is enough to dampen the once generous spirits here.
We still want people to conserve water. We want to stop the offers of shower. We can provide drinking water to the Metropolitan Friends, but we cannot provide showers for everybody. And I call to the businesses in West Des Moines to stop advertising free showers.
And some flooded homeowners who were once grateful for the city's help are now feeling cheated.
They could have at least sent the National Guard down to help me. They went down, they graded a park so they could have a baseball game down there, but they couldn't come up here and help sandbag. I don't understand it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't.
By early evening, the harsh reality was beginning to sink in. 250,000 people in Des Moines will spend the next month learning to live without running drinking water. The city will have to truck in enough to keep 2.5 million gallons a day. Tonight in Des Moines, the sun is setting under clear skies. There's no sign that this city's patience is about to be tested once again. The forecast is for heavy rain by the end of the week.
And Deborah Roberts is with us now from Des Moines. Deborah, with so much contaminated water out there, what's the main health concern tonight?
Health officials, Stone, are primarily concerned about tetanus. They've been offering free tetanus shots over the last few days as a precaution against infection as people begin to get out and try to clean up from the floods.
Are nerves wearing a little thin, given the fact that the worst may still be yet to come?
I think that's quite accurate, and I think people are also a little bit reluctant to think that the worst is over. It's clear here tonight, but the forecast calls for more rain, and there's a good chance that people may be facing the same kind of flooding this coming weekend, so nobody seems to think that the worst is over yet.
Well, we're pulling for the folks out there. Thanks, Deborah.
The floods of '93 not only brought the national spotlight to central Iowa.
They also brought national figures who pitched in to help out.
We submit to thy will. Take care of these, thy people.
Former presidential candidate Jesse Jackson prayed with residents at a water distribution site and offered support from his Rainbow Coalition.
Across town, entertainers made a trip from Missouri, bringing drinking water and a much-needed emotional lift. Lori Groves reports.
Nothing could keep this crowd away from the main event. It was a wet, chilly day, but people lined up to see Andy Williams, Jim Stafford, Soji Tabuchi, Tony Orlando, and other big Branson acts. The veteran entertainers brought 107,000 gallons of bottled water to town. Their fans brought their cameras.
Can you step back a minute, lady?
And they brought their pens. The stars were accommodating in every way and really lifted the spirits of the people who've made Branson a cash cow.
I think it's wonderful that they're coming from Branson and helping out here in Iowa. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's a big old trip for me to come out here and see some of our entertainers from Branson, which I think is a great idea.
Andy Williams, a native Iowan, says it's sad to see his home state in such a mess.
It's terrible to see your home state going through this.
But no one in this crowd seemed depressed. After all, they got exactly what they came for, a little bit of glamour in their waterlogged lives.
For much of the nation, these are the pictures that captured their attention. The tireless sandbagging brigades, men, women, and children fighting to reclaim the Metro's water supply. Unselfish efforts that impressed NBC Tonight Show host Jay Leno.
When I watch the news and I see people pitching in and helping and doing what they can, I mean, it really it makes you feel good, and it does make you appreciate what you have. You know how awesome Mother Nature and those things can be. Sometimes when we get a little cocky about what we can do as human beings, something like this comes along and goes, no, let's get back to center here. So, of course, it's a terrible thing, but I think everybody will recover. And with help and contributions and whatnot, we'll get back to where it was and hopefully stronger. So it doesn't happen again, but it does show you, when I watch the news, it gives you a sense of the family and the sense of the community and the sense of how people can put all their differences and little problems aside to pitch in and help. I mean, when we see it on the news here in California and back in Boston where my dad is, you see people from all walks of life and all colors, and they're just pitching in and helping one another. And, you know, you don't see the looting and all the other things that you think might accompany something like this, because they're just not that kind of people. And it makes us feel good that, you know, that the country can go through this kind of thing and come out hopefully stronger and better. And we're all doing what we can do to help, and anything you need us for, just let us know.
That feeling of family and sense of sharing that Jay Leno talked about are big reasons why Iowans were able to cope with the floods of '93.
So many people did so much during this ordeal. There's no way to mention them all, but these are just a few who went beyond the call of civic duty. At the first sign of trouble, the Guard was there, called to action in West Des Moines, leading a sandbagging effort which took courage.
It's less than a half a block away on this side, and it's about 2.5 blocks that way, so it's getting here fast. It broke at both ends, and it's coming to sandwiches, so.
It's here. Out. Leave them here. Forget it.
In the end, it may have appeared this battle was lost, but the fact is, the Guard helped spearhead a feeling of community which has been with us throughout this crisis. Guardsmen put their lives on the line, helping to build a fortress around the Des Moines Waterworks, hanging from this chopper, unloading sandbags so that fellow guardsmen on the ground could begin the task of reclaiming the plant. The job was exhausting. The danger was great. At every crisis point, the men and women clad in green camouflage have been there for our city, day and night, giving all that they could. And thus the ultimate sacrifice. Specialist Stephen West lost his life trying to construct a communication site to help coordinate flood relief. It is this effort we can never repay. To all the men and women of the National Guard, we say thank you. You are truly our heroes.
And they do need volunteers to show up down at the main library in downtown to do some sandbagging.
From the time the first calls for help were broadcast over the airwaves, volunteers have come out in force to help our city recover from this crisis.
Now, look at the brigade that they've got going on here. Is this staggering or what? Look at that, look at that, look at that outpouring of help. Isn't that great?
They've lended a shoulder for victims to cry on.
It's an American thing to do. I think people should be helping people out in times like this.
At times, the work was exhausting, and volunteers needed help themselves.
Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 1,000 volunteers. So the people are really pitching in and doing a great job.
And they stayed, and they worked together, and their spirit never wavered.
I saw an enormous number of people who had just stopped their lives and come in to, volunteer and help other people deal with their problems.
Iowa's good country. Folks pitch in when they need to.
To all who have come forward and volunteered during this time of crisis, we say thank you. You are truly our heroes.
It took an army of volunteers plus the hard work of city, county, and state workers to get through those first rough weeks of the floods of '93.
That hard work paid off in a big way on Thursday, July 22nd, when the water finally came back on.
Live from WHO TV 13, where the news comes first 24 hours a day. This is News Center 13 at 6.
It sputters and spits, but for most of the metro tonight, the water flows again, and that's reason to celebrate.
Yes, we're so excited. It's wonderful. Say yay, Megan.
Good evening. It's been a long wait, and it's finally over.
Yeah, water is flowing in much of the metro area. It began with Zone A this morning. Waterworks announcing that water would reach downtown businesses and everyone else living within that zone. Zone B was next to go online. Just after noon, folks were given the good news that they could go ahead and flush.
Zone C was added around 3:30 this afternoon. Residents began the process necessary to get the taps turned on. And Zone D is still waiting for the green light. At this rate, that shouldn't be too much longer.
But first, the celebration. If it hadn't rained today, there probably would have been dancing in our streets.
Therese Thompson says she's never seen so many people so excited over such a simple pleasure.
Our water's on.
What's the first thing you're going to do with that water?
Jump in the shower.
My dad went back and had to take pictures of it and everything.
This is the sight everyone has been longing to see. And this is the sound that's music to our ears.
It's wonderful. Say, yay, Megan!
Nearly 12 days without water has turned lives upside down and made bathing an adventure.
Are you happy to have the water back?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Why?
I don't have to get water dumped on me, so I don't have cold water.
I just about fell over. It's what a relief.
But don't throw your water jugs away yet. This stuff is not drinkable. Remember, it's for bathing and flushing only. That means this pile of laundry will have to wait. But Christy Knuckles doesn't care.
This is how we've been using our toilet. This is the sump pump water I've been carrying from the neighbors in this bucket. And then I take it from here and put it in the toilet tank.
Even with water just sputtering from the tap, it was better than nothing, and the relief was evident.
We heard B had water. I said, I'm in B. I'm going home. I haven't had water for 11 days.
From Des Moines Water Zones A, B, and C, Therese Thompson, News Center 13.
Once you do get your water back on, what exactly will you be able to use it for? Well, here's a list of the do's and don'ts of this water use. You can use the water to flush your toilets. You can shower and bathe in it. And if you have a dishwasher, you can use the water to do dishes. If you're doing them by hand, make sure that water is very hot. Do not drink this water. Don't use it to cook with. And do not do laundry with this water. Some of the minerals in the water could stain your clothing.
And we have this word just in. I want to pass it along. Des Moines Water Works is now requesting that customers in Zone D initiate their water service. So that means everyone in Zone D, and there are quite a few right here in the studio who are raising their hands in celebration. Zone D, now you can start those steps to turn your water back on. With the water getting back online, there's less need for the water distribution sites around the metro. They sure have been a lifesaver for the past couple of weeks, but many will now start closing down as water service is restored. There have been 84 sites throughout the city. Beginning next week, as need begins to go down, the numbers will be reduced to 34. Well, no one is happier that the water is back on than L.D. McMullen.
Today, he thanked customers for their cooperation and urged them to still be cautious.
We're still asking everybody, because of the vulnerability that we are in with the treatment plant with a limited capability of pumping water, to conserve water and use water very preciously. And our customers, I think, are really the ones to thank to be able to bring us up, because if they would have not followed our recommendations, the demand on the system would have been such that we would have had to stretch it out over a 2-day period.
The return of water in Des Moines and surrounding communities, a moment many of us will remember for a long time.
But we also need to remember the crisis didn't end when water service returned. Thousands of Central Iowans faced the overwhelming burden of cleaning up from the floods of '93.
That's about it right there. That's what's left of the store.
As you can see, they've emptied out nearly the entire waterlogged contents of this place.
Last time I was down here, I could not see my sink or the stove. But I didn't know that everything, it's terrible.
These folks had very little. And what they had, they lost.
So everybody's just going to have to basically start over and salvage what they can and go from there.
Moments of triumph, moments of despair. The floods of '93 brought a flood of emotions to Central Iowa.
Years from now, when we look back, we'll remember the devastation, remember the heartache.
But let us never forget the helping hands and open arms, how communities and a nation came together to survive the floods of '93.
It has come down hard, it's come down fast, it's moving quickly across.
It's really unbelievable. I didn't think it would get this bad.
They pitched hundreds of sandbags trying to avoid a disaster in Valley Junction, but time ran out.
The mandatory evacuation is underway.
The reason we're broadcasting on this situation is that we are out of power in downtown Des Moines. This just coming in just moments ago. The Waterworks levee did give way. At this point, folks should be bottling their waters.
We had all 13 registers going, and they were customers at least 6, 7 deep waiting to get checked out.
We are in some dire straits here with the flooding that's going on.
This is what we have left of our home.
Raccoon River flowing directly over the levees into Grace Lake. This place is going to be a mess for a long, long time.
Just this side of the bridge, you can see where the water is pouring in.
My mom has like 40-some grandchildren, so there's somebody down here all the time. You know, this is our home, and we're not going to probably be able to come back to it.
The effort to safeguard the West Des Moines water treatment plant. Look at the brigade that they've got going on here. Is this staggering or what?
I can't take it anymore.
Hang in there.
I can't take it anymore.
Thank you. Several people broke down and they were very choked up, but they were resolute.
He's back to Washington.
Perfect, but we'll be able to save them, okay? Okay. Yeah. Look at that. Look at all my grandkids.
And I regret to notify you that he died. Next of kin's been notified, and the headquarters sends its condolences to the family.